All right, everybody, I gotta start this video off with some big news. That's right, even bigger than the stuff that happened in the last chapter. And no, it's not going to be about the jacket for a change. All right. So when I first put on this jacket 4 days ago, I took up a solemn responsibility to you all. A responsibility to discuss all jacket-related One Piece news from now till the end of time. And we have some new jacket news today. In collaboration with the upcoming film One Piece Film Red, a company called Peach John, I've never heard of them, but that's what they're called, is releasing Uta's jacket. So if you want to get Uta's jacket from the hit movie One Piece Film Red, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm assuming it's awesome. Go check out that company, and you could purchase Uta's jacket for yourself. Also, go check out Artur's Twitter, because he's the one that tweeted this out, so I found out about this. You could also buy her dress, and I think there's going to be an underwear line, but whatever, that doesn't matter. What matters is you can buy the jacket, okay? Alright, so now let's talk about some other stuff in the last chapter, chapter 1055 of One Piece. Spoilers, I guess, about maybe the ancient weapon. You know, Robin and Law find a road poneglyph or a load poneglyph, whatever. That's not really important. I had to start it off with the jacket news, alright? So let's go. Okay, so a couple of things to address about this one. Oh boy. Alright, there's an underwater section of Wano that exists because there are these giant earthen walls that were created. Not just walls, but it was literally surrounding the entire island, so it basically turned Wano into like a giant cup. Alright, and so rainwater over the centuries just built up in this cup, and then all of the citizens of Wano had to keep going up higher and higher on Mount Fuji to build the civilization that we see right now. So there's that. There's also the fact that Pluton is lurking under the nation, and that these walls were built to, like, I guess, keep Pluton in. And, well, maybe not necessarily. Well, I don't know, because the thing is, like, Shirahoshi is Poseidon, and she is a conscious living being. So there is a theory out there, and I've even made a video about it a while back, that was like, okay, well, what if all of the ancient weapons are like that then? Or rather, what if the ancient weapons do have, like, a degree of consciousness? So maybe they're not all, like, you know, Shirahoshi, but they might have, like, maybe it's a giant battleship, but the battleship has, like, a consciousness, like Thomas the Tank Engine or something. I don't know, okay? But the idea is that Sukiyake does state in the chapter that in order for Pluton to be taken out of the country, the walls have to come down, all right? So the walls collapse, and then Pluton can emerge, and then, I don't know. I mean, I guess you could also say it's whoever pilots Pluton, because Shirahoshi, you know, she's the one that can actually order around the Sea Kings, but then there's also some problems with that, where you can imagine, like, okay, Shirahoshi's very kind, she wouldn't use the Sea Kings to destroy the world, but, like, let's say somebody kidnaps Shirahoshi, and then, you know, forces her to summon the Sea Kings for their will, like, let's say Im-sama were to do that, or something, okay? So, kind of the same thing with Pluton. You could say Pluton itself is just an object, it's just a ship, you know, and as Frankie once said, you know, ships are not, you know, actually I think it was Tom that said this back in the flashback, but, you know, like, ships themselves are neither good nor evil, okay? You know, they cannot bring life or destruction. That's all the people that pilot the ships and build the ships, okay? What the builder's intent was, what the pilot's intent was, okay? So right now, let's just say Pluton, for all intents and purposes, is just like a massive warship that's just, you know, docked underneath Wano somewhere, and then the only way to get it out, because it's just such a massive battleship, is to remove the walls. And actually, I don't know, it raises up or something. Maybe all of Wano is a battleship. Maybe Mount Fuji is a giant cannon. I swear to God, Oda, if that's actually the case, where the walls come down and the entirety of Wano just rises out of the water, and then Mount Fuji just, and it's like a cannon this entire time, I swear to God, all right? That would be the most awesome thing ever, okay? So, let's just assume, though, it is a battleship because it was built in Water 7. Like, something was built in Water 7, okay? I guess it could, maybe like, Pluton maybe consumed a devil fruit, like somebody fed Pluton a devil fruit so it has a consciousness in that way. But something was definitely constructed with metal and wood and nuts and bolts and a lot of elbow grease at Water 7, because blueprints of this exist, you know what I mean? That's the setup that we get, okay? Now, there's a couple of other things I wanted to address address before we get directly to Pluton itself. The first thing was the situation with Jack. A lot of people were commenting about that, okay? So as Sukiyaki and Robin and Law are walking down the staircase, you know, he mentions that, like, I've never told Orochi or Kaido about this location, about this underwater city, and this is actually where the road poneglyph is located, way at the bottom, at the base of Mount Fuji, in a cavern where the original Wano civilization was. I never told them about it, but Kaido had a fishman on his crew, that was Jack, and so Jack could swim down, and he found out about the underwater city, and then he found the road poneglyph, okay? So Kaido definitely had it in his possession. I always assumed the road poneglyph would have been on Onigashima, like wherever its original resting place was. I just always assumed that Kaido would just move it. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, hey, Jack, we found this road poneglyph. Okay, I'll just pick it up and bring it to the surface, and then we can put it on Onigashima. I always assumed that because, you know, Kaido would like to have that on standby, because obviously he could not read it, but whenever he did figure out a way to decipher it, you know, whether it be through a Kozuki clan member, or a member of the Third Eye tribe, or capturing Robin, or whatever way, you would assume that he would just have that in a dungeon on Onigashima. So, but that wasn't the case, though. I guess they found out about its location, they knew where it was, but I guess Kaido and Orochi felt like, well, Orochi doesn't really give a shit. He didn't really care about finding the One Piece or anything. He was about just, like, ruling Wano and then running it into the ground. That's all Orochi cared about. Kaido's ultimate goal, you would assume, though, would be to find the One Piece and become king of the pirates. So I guess he just assumed that, like, okay, there's no point in moving it. It's way down there in the base of Mount Fuji in a cave, covered in water. Nobody can get down there unless you're a fishman or you're a merfolk or something, or you're Odin, I guess. So, you know what I mean. Just leave it down there for safekeeping, and then we'll eventually, if we figure out a way to decipher it, then we'll go down and decipher it. Okay, there we go. Now, a lot of people brought up the whole thing with Jack. It was like, well, wait a second. Jack has a devil fruit power. How did he get down there? And I was, like, looking at the comments, and I'm like, well, he probably went down there before he ate the devil fruit. See, the thing is about Jack is that he's clearly the weakest out of all of the All-Stars, like, just in the fact of his rank, going King and Queen and then Jack as the lowest face card in a deck. So, it was confirmed in a Vivre card that Jack joined the crew 20 years ago. He was part of the crew 20 years ago, but he's 28 right now, which means he joined when he was 8, all right? I highly doubt Jack, you know, back then had the power of the mammoth fruit, okay? In fact, I would argue that Jack, for probably a very long time, maybe up until only like a couple of years ago in the One Piece timeline, was probably just one of, maybe he was one of the original members of the Toby Roppo, or he was just a headliner, okay? I don't think Jack was an all-star for like years and years and years or anything like that. In fact, it was already confirmed from what we found out during Onigashima that when you defeat a member of the Toby, or when one of the Toby Roppo defeats an all-star, then they get the all-star position, okay? That's probably what happened with Jack, I would assume. There was probably another character that had the code name of Jack. And remember, these are not their real names, okay? King's real name is Albert, okay? We don't know Queen's real name, and we don't know Jack's real name, but those are just their code names for the crew. I don't know if we'll ever find out their real names, but think of it like that, okay? So there was probably a member of Kaido's All-Stars that was named Jack, or had the title of Jack, before our Jack, the Mammoth, okay? And then maybe he was a member of the Toby Roppo, and then, I don't know, maybe like 5 years ago, he killed that, you know, the previous Jack, and then he became Jack. You don't know Jack? Okay, exactly. Exactly. There's a lot of Jacks going on here, okay? Hey, you guys want to play a game of Jacks? Okay, so that might be the basic situation here, okay? And then maybe he, you know, when he got the title of Jack, that's when he ate the mammoth fruit and he became Jack the Drought, okay? Stomping through the fields and ruining everybody's, you know, crops and everything, and then, you know, that whole thing, okay? It's very clear the way that King and Queen treat Jack. It's like their dumbass younger brother that, like, embarrasses them at family events, like, just get out of here, Jack the Drag Down, you know, we don't want you here, right? When we saw the flashback 20 years ago when Kaido fought against the Scabbards and Odin originally, and in the Udon region, we saw King and Queen there. We didn't see Jack there, although he was part of the crew. It was just he was a little kid, okay? So I highly doubt that he had the fruit back then, and yeah, you know, and it's also probably an interesting, you know, drawback there for him to decide to eat the fruit fruit, maybe Jack was just so dedicated to become an all-star, he's like, I don't even care if the fact I'm a fish man and I eat this devil fruit is going to hinder me. I'm going to eat it anyway if it means that I can become an all-star. If it means, like, I could be like my big brothers, Queen and King, I would do it. I want to be Jack. You know what I mean? So it might have been something like that where he's just like, I don't even care if this takes away my ability to swim. I want to be at the top echelon of Kaido's crew, okay? Now, there are still some problems with that, like one of them being obvious of, like, if Jack is the only one that can really access that area with the cavern and the road poneglyph, you know, why would Kaido allow him to, like, all right, you could just go ahead and eat a devil fruit so that one strength is taken away from you. Although, I feel like if Kaido really wanted to, he could just find it as well. Maybe that was the reason. Maybe it was like originally when they landed in Wano, when Kaido first started taking over the place, he had no idea what the geography was like, right? So he was like, hey, Jack, you know, dive down in the water and find out if there's anything down there. And then Jack did that, and he's like, he came back up to the surface, and he's like, Master Kaido, I found this cave down there that has a red poneglyph. And Kaido's like, yeah, that's what we need. You know, Kaido's doing the finger guns. He's like, yeah, that's what we need right there. Good job, Jack. But now that he knows where it is, it's like he doesn't need Jack to go down there and find it anymore. Kaido knows exactly where the cavern is located. Jack would have told him the exact coordinates for it, you know, and so now probably if Kaido wanted to, he could have just jumped into the water and then, like, poneglyph room whenever he wanted to. But yeah, don't think too hard about the Jack thing. I think it's just a situation where he explored it before he got the fruit, and he became an all-star relatively recently, like within the last 5 years of the story or so. So that's the situation with Jack. Something else, little thing that I forgot to bring up is, remember when Brook turned into a ghost and he was exploring the castle looking for the road poneglyph, and he found the room with the Kokeshi dolls, the room that Sukiyaki was in, and that was a regular poneglyph, and he went back up and he's like, sorry, Robin, I couldn't find the road poneglyph, but I did find a regular poneglyph. You know, at the end of the day, Brook really could have found the road poneglyph himself as a ghost. It's just that it was so far down below the castle. Brook, you know, I guess he went down all the way to the sub-basement and he found the regular poneglyph, and there was a tunnel that went down even further than that. It's just that Brook did not explore it all the way, you know? And so that leads us into the next situation where I didn't even realize this during the review, but there's a diagram of this. It's very obvious. That stairway from the basement of the castle goes all the way down to the base of Mount Fuji. All right, this is a giant-ass mountain, okay, that is based off of the actual Mount Fuji in Japan, which is about 3,700 meters tall, okay? And so, literally, like, they're walking down these steps like it's not a big deal in the chapter, but in reality, they're walking down, like, 3,000 meters, okay? Now, that's not, like, a big deal because it's Robin and Law and Sukiyaki, and they're all really strong characters. So, I mean, like, it would take them a while. Maybe they could use Law's ability to kind of speed it up, like teleport down a little bit further. But yeah, that is the way the diagram looked in the chapter. They walked down the entire damn mountain, all right, to get to the very, you know, bottom of the mountain where the sea level was, where the original Wano was built on, like, just a regular island, and then that's where the cave was, okay? And then Sukiyaki confirms that even further down below that, so actually, like, in the bedrock of the island itself, that is where Pluton sleeps. And I'm kicking myself so damn hard for this next one because I even, like, when I was preparing to do the review, I'm like, I'm gonna bring this up, I'm gonna mention it, and I completely forgot, okay? That is a downside when you don't script your stuff. You just, you know, blabber out whatever you want to talk about, right? That's a problem, but that's the situation that we're working with here, okay? So, let me think about this for a moment. Pluton, ancient weapon that can destroy entire islands, is underneath the island of Wano, like the actual island of Wano. What other characters were recently ejected down a giant hole into the underbelly of Wano? I wonder if Kaido and Big Mom. What? Yeah, so if you remember back when, you know, they fell down, like Big Mom fell down the hole, and then Kaido fell down the hole too, Electric Boogaloo. You see the diagram, they go all the way down the mountain, and then all the way into the bedrock of Wano, the original Wano, and then they hit that magma pool, okay? So, couple of ways to interpret this. The first one I had is Pluton just in the magma pool? Like, maybe there is, like, a subterranean magma chamber of Wano, and Pluton is just such a powerful ship, it's literally floating in the magma. Like, magma does nothing to melt it or destroy it, it's perfectly fine, okay? And that really would... That would make a lot of sense, because Pluton, as in Pluto, as in Hades, as in the Lord of the Underworld... You know, the underworld typically is interpreted as, like, different from hell, but, you know, this is One Piece. You can add some extra flavor to it. So if you wanted to depict the underworld of, like the Greek underworld as, like, it's hell, it's like a parallel to hell with fire and brimstone and the devil, it's like, okay, not 100% accurate, but that's okay, Oda. It's all right. The idea, it's the Lord of the Underworld. Here's a giant magma chamber, and here's a boat that's floating in the magma that can obliterate islands. That's pretty metal. That's pretty metal. Like, I want you to picture a magma pool and a huge battleship with huge cannons on top of the magma pool, and then I want you to picture that as like an Iron Maiden album cover or some shit. Okay, it works. It works. You know what I mean? Like, okay, all right, all right. So if that's the case, though, is this going to be a thing where, like, maybe Big Mom and Kaido fell into, like, a magma pool, like, around the chamber, and then they're, like, you know, melting and turning into lava zombies, and then they just fall through the chamber and they land? So it's like an air pocket. It's like a giant cavern that's just filled with magma, and then Pluton's right there, and then they just like, mama, and then they just land on the deck of Pluton. They just land there, and they're just like, are you still alive, Kaido? It's like, oh god, I think I drank too much. Oh, half my face is melted off. That's a thing. It's like, where are we? Like, I don't know. Holy crap, this is Pluton. All right. So, that's a problem. I think that is going to be relevant because Oda made it a specific point to show Big Mom and Kaido got shot under the ground of the original island, and that's where Sukiyaki says is Pluton. So this is going to be a problem one way or the other. I don't think Big Mom and Kaido are dead, and I don't think it's going to necessarily be like they land on Pluton and they instantly begin to pilot it. It's like, all right, hang on, Lin, I'm busting us out of here. Boom! And then, like, Kaido blows up the side of the mountain or whatever and escapes. I don't think it's going to be anything like that, but, like, they might find Pluton down there, like Law using his ability. I brought that up. Like, Law has his room. A lot of people commented that Law also has the ability known as Scan, and that's an ability that not a lot of people remember, but a lot of people did. He only used it one time, way back at Punk Hazard, when he scanned for the Marines' Den Mushies. So it's like he, you know, uses room, you know, and then scan, and it's like... and he's like, detects everything that he's specifically looking for, like an MRI or whatever. And so he's like, oh, he takes all the Den Mushies and then teleports them to his hand, okay? So he could maybe do that in a broad sense of, like, radar or sonar or, like, echolocation or something, where Sukiyaki tells him, like, you know, Pluton is even further down than this, but I don't know how to get there. And then Law's just like, hold on, give me 5 seconds, room. Now, we've seen Law can make some big-ass rooms, okay? Back at freaking Dressrosa, we saw him make a room that was like the size of the mountain to, you know, throw off Treble and Doflamingo so they didn't know that they were in a room. So size is really not an issue for Law. Yeah, so he could just make a room and just, he's like, I don't see anything yet, and just keep expanding his room, and then he finally finds, like, he uses Scan, he's like, holy shit, there's a giant cavern down there. Oh my god, what is that thing? Oh my god, the cannons are so big on that monster. You know, it's just like, Law is just talking to himself, and then, you know, Robin's there, he's like, Law, what do you see? I'm like, they're so big, and Robin's like, what are you referring to here? It's just like the giant Pluton, you know, what are you doing here? So it's like, oh yes, of course, teleport time, and then shambles, and then flip downstairs and whatever. Okay, yeah, so that could actually happen, like, in the next chapter, like, totally, like, I'm 100% down with that. Okay, that's also maybe the reason why Law just showed up. You know, it was a conversation between Robin and Sukiyaki, and then Law's just there, and it's like, yeah, because his ability would actually be indispensable indispensable. Some people have even said, using Law's ability, couldn't they just warp Pluton out of the island without destroying it, without bringing down the walls or anything? Because it might have been like, at this point, I don't even know if what Odin meant by opening up the country was more like literal or metaphorical. Like, did he mean, not metaphorical in the sense, but like from a political standpoint, opening up Wano, or from a literal standpoint, like bringing down the walls of Wano, okay? And it obviously has something to do with Pluton, so maybe Odin was like, after reading about Joy Boy and learning about the true history of the Void Century, maybe Odin was like, okay, we're going to need Pluton for this, and in order to get Pluton out of the island, we have to bring down the walls. But if there was a way to get Pluton off of Wano, or out of Wano, under the ground, without bringing down the walls, that's not the major point. It's just getting Pluton to be accessible, and Law's ability would be able to do that. It doesn't, I don't even care how big Pluton is. If it is like the size of an aircraft carrier from like our world. You know, when we were in San Diego, we visited the USS Midway, which is like a giant aircraft carrier. It was like the biggest during World War II. So even if it's like the size of a more modern 20th or 21st century aircraft carrier, that's a pretty big boat. But from what we've seen with Law's room abilities, he should still be able to move it, okay? And this is really important too. This is Pluton we're talking about here. So even if it like shortens Law's lifespan a little bit, I still think it would be worth it. You know what I mean? Okay, absolutely. But yeah, so that's pretty much I wanted to say is just about that. Like, okay, the situation with Jack, and then the situation with why Brook did not find it. Is Big Mom and Kaido, like, are they located in the same place that Pluton is at right now? That's a big deal. And how the hell are they going to get Pluton out of there? And there's still the question remaining of, like, how the walls were even created. I brought up in the video, maybe it's like, maybe the previous user of Pika's fruit, you know, the Ishi no Mi, the stone assimilation fruit, or if the red line is an artificial construct, maybe the same way the red line was built was the same way they built these walls, something along those lines, maybe. But yeah, so there's still a lot of mysteries that need to be resolved, and there's still a lot of geography that needs to be uncovered, okay? Also, Onigashima, we always assumed Onigashima was like the skull of a giant that was like under the mountain or something, but we saw during the flashback when Sukiyaki showed the diagram of Wano 800 years ago, Onigashima, as in the Skull Mountain, it was not present, which means it was placed there later. So here's something fascinating. We always assumed there was a theory that, like, we know that Ors was called the continent polar, so we always assumed maybe the reason why all of the different regions of Wano looked like they were all spaced apart, like they were like pieces of a puzzle, like they didn't belong there originally. That's because they weren't. They were artificially created, but not by Ors and the ancient giants. They were created by the citizens of Wano as they moved up the mountain. Maybe the ancient giants were around and they helped, but they were a rather like warfaring race, so it seemed kind of odd that they would do that. Anyway, point is, maybe after, like, they moved up to the top of Mount Fuji, maybe later it was Ors or something, because Ors lived about 400 years ago, 500 years ago. I don't know how long it would take for the rainwater to fill up the island, but, you know, probably a few hundred years to do that. Maybe the ancient giants brought one of the heads of their previous chieftains or something and set it down on Onigashima, and it wasn't even always called Onigashima. It was mentioned by Izo. It was called something else during his time. So, I don't know. There's still a lot of mysteries to be resolved, but hopefully next chapter, hopefully, you know, Law and Robin could put their heads together and they could figure out some way to, like, learn about Pluton to find the chamber. I don't think they just finished walking down, like, God knows how many steps to get to this chamber, and Sukiyaki's like, I mean, Sukiyaki's a little bit of a tease here, because he's like, it is here, Nico Robin. Underneath Wano lurks Pluton. But we first have to walk down 3,000 meters of stairs. Okay, I guess if it's worth it. It's like, okay. I mean, think about how long that would take, seriously. Like, you're just walking down the steps and just... So, you two know each other? And Law and Robin are like, yeah, we're acquaintances, you know? It's like, oh, I see. So, Luffy's pretty powerful, huh? He's like, oh, yeah, he's crazy. I mean, really strong. And he's like, you must be really happy to be on his crew. And Robin's like, yeah, of course. And then Law's like, I'm not part of his crew. He's like, sure you are. It's a very awkward kind of conversation. He's like 2,000 meters down. They're like, so how's the weather today? He's like, we don't have to talk. We could just walk in silence down this corridor. They get all the way to the bottom. And it's like, okay, they found a load poneglyph. That's good. That's important. We need that. It's like, okay, but where's Pluton? He's like, oh, I actually don't know where that is. It's like, we just walked down 3,000 damn meters of steps. And it's like, we don't even know how to get there. No, we're not walking back up until, we're not leaving this place without Pluton, all right? So it's like, well, I'll figure it out. Room, scan. It's like, there it is. Okay, let's go. Teleport, you know what I mean? Okay, yeah. So we'll see what happens next chapter. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody, and make sure to go check out Uta's jacket, and let's just move on to Jellyfish Facts. Absolutely.
Welcome to Jellyfish Facts. Jellyfish Facts.
So for this one, a little bit different. We're not going to be talking about a specific species of jellyfish. Rather, I just wanted to talk about how jellyfish sting. There was a few comments that I saw that people are like, you should just explain how jellyfish actually sting you, because a lot of people, like, on the surface, it doesn't make any sense. They're literally called jellyfish, okay? And if you look at a picture of one, it's like, they don't look that sharp, you touch one and it's like, how does that work? Remember in SpongeBob, the joke was always like electricity. That's how I always thought jellyfish used to sting you growing up, because in SpongeBob, whenever they're jellyfishing or whatever, they touch a jellyfish and it like buzzes you. It's like, it like shocks you. So I just assumed they were electric. So there are, animals like electric eels and stuff that can like shock you with electricity, but that's not how jellyfish do it, okay? No, jellyfish, the way they sting you is actually a lot more terrifying. You might have heard me talk about a harpoon at this point. Like jellyfish stings are always referred to as like a harpoon-like stinger. That's actually not wrong, okay? So if you look at the tentacles, like up close, you have to look through like a microscope to really see them, but there are these little compartments or like pores that are in the tentacles, okay? And inside of those pores, there is a like a little bit of like a needle, like a lot more, obviously smaller and thinner than a sewing needle, but like there's a little needle in there, and it has barbs to it, much like how a bee's stinger, like when a bee stings you, it rips out the stinger. The barbs like get stuck in your flesh, okay? And that's what makes a bee sting so, painful, and you got to actually like be very careful when you pull out the stinger, okay? Kind of something like that, and it does resemble a harpoon, okay? And it's wound up inside of this compartment with like a bunch of like spring-like appendages or whatever, and when you touch a jellyfish's tentacle, whether or not it's intentionally or unintentionally, like you're just swimming and you just brush up against one is what typically tends to happen, the nerves activate, like, like a kind of like a reflex, like a spasm or whatever, and the harpoon literally shoots out like a needle, like a really thin needle, just pierces your flesh really fast. Kind of reminds me of the way the Venus flytrap will trap like flies and stuff, where like when a Venus flytrap is open, there are these little hairs that are like nerves, kind of like for a plant. And so when a fly or something bumps one of these hairs, it like triggers like an electrical response to like shut the flower and kill and trap the fly or whatever, and they absorb the nutrients. Kind of something like that, where the nerves activate and this little thread with this barbed harpoon-like tip to it just shoots directly into your flesh. And this is what a jellyfish sting typically looks like for that reason. And even with the jellyfish being like washed up on shore and technically dead, the neurological response, I guess, like the nervous response could still be there. So even if after it's washed up, if you step on it, it'll still sting you. And it's like, it would be bad enough if it was just one of these things, like one little tiny little sewing needle is like piercing your flesh, but there's a lot of these things, like they're tiny, okay? So if you brush up against a jellyfish, you're not just going to be being poked with like one or two of these things. It's probably going to be several dozen, even more so depending on how long you stay in contact with the jellyfish, you know what I mean? So that's rather terrifying. That would actually be even more worse than like the electricity from SpongeBob, if every time they were jellyfishing in SpongeBob, like remember that episode when Squidward was like stung a bunch of times and he was in the wheelchair and he was all bandaged up, and it was like, it would be even worse if we saw the close-up of like the needle like piercing Squidward and just like, no, ow man, SpongeBob, no, the needles. SpongeBob did that kind of shit back in the day. Remember the episode with the butterfly where it's like, oh, he's so cute, and it's just like like close up, which by the way, that wasn't a butterfly, that was actually I think a horsefly they used for the episode.
but that simultaneously freaked me the hell out as a kid and also got me really interested in studying in some chocolate. You have a good day. Chocolate!